Hello, ghouls and goblins. You know, every day for you guys, I work tirelessly seeking out the dark beyond of the internet, trying to find some stuff to scare ya. Well, today, I actually had a very easy time of it because somebody else already found all this footage. Today, we're gonna be taking a fisheye look through a POV lens as we examine and shout out some found footage horror classics, cult hits, and ones you never heard before, but you should. Let's dive on in for our top 5 terrifying found footage you should never watch. But you should actually watch these movies because, you know, they're pretty good. That's just what the title's called. Let's go. Number 5, Spree. Coming in first on our list is the newest release and a new age classic that I think, give it a few years, will get the recognition. Spree. It was called American Psycho for the digital age, and I think that fits. Spree stars Joe Keery of Stranger Things and Joe fame, putting down the baseball bat and the hair gel and sitting behind the wheel of a ride-share service, playing a down-on-his-luck young man named Kurt who wants nothing more than to be a viral, famous social media star. Very relatable. But in a sea of unboxing videos, react TikToks, let's plays, confession videos, hashtag challenges, apologies, and top 5 videos about horror movies, Kurt struggles to find any sort of audience for his content whatsoever and decides that the best way to stand out on the internet is to live stream himself snuffing his passengers he picks up in his rideshare app. Okay, you know, to each their own. I'll stick to doing YouTube videos, you do you. Now, Spree is not the smartest movie out there. The social satire is a little basic, to be honest, and it could have done with a lot more fleshing out on its commentary on social media addiction and internet validation, but it makes for a very solid foundation for a flick. It's got a plot that probably would have made for an okay Black Mirror episode, and maybe this movie wouldn't have worked as well if it wasn't for how fun Joe Keery is. Maybe I'm extremely biased because I love the guy, and because like most of the Western world, Steve Harrington is the only reason I watch Stranger Things, but he brings a super fun mania to the social media addicted lunatic. The American Psycho comparison, definitely apt. That's one of my absolute favorite movies of all time for just how sick and like entertainingly evil Patrick Bateman is. You know he's the most reprehensible, unlikable character ever put to film, but Christian Bale is just so damn charismatic you love him. And that's what's happening here. Joe Keery somehow manages to be both convincing as a really scary psychopath, but also oddly sympathetic and earnest. You know, it's the desperation. Have you ever seen a man soaked head to toe in blood, shaking and quivering after doing something unspeakable, and he's still asking you to subscribe to his channel? And speaking of vapid, deranged, dead-eyed internet personalities looking for fame, if you're looking for more scary movie reviews, ghosts, goblins, and aliens, well, click through to Top 5 Scary and subscribe. We've got loads more content with me behind the wheel, but not really, I can't drive. Look at me, I just skate. Number 4, VHS. VHS eventually exploded into a mega hit franchise. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, not even including spin-offs, but it all comes back to the daring original. VHS was a collection of horror movie shorts, all under the same theme of bizarre found footage horror, and the result is electric. It's like getting to sit at home for your own private horror movie film festival. Now, the collections of shorts featured were all directed by, at the time, fairly underground independent horror movie directors, but now looking back at it, it's like they've assembled a really impressive pantheon of rising horror legend. We got stuff from Adder Wingard, who gave us You're Next in the 2016 Blair Witch reboot, which was okay. We got one from David Bruckner, who would go on to direct The Ritual in the 2022 Hellraiser. And we've got T.I. West, who would make the A24 darling Pearl. So it's a film with nothing but wall-to-wall talent and creativity at their best. It also made the format of being an anthology movie like part of the plot of the movie itself, which I thought was very meta and juicy. A group of career crooks film themselves committing violent and vile acts, and hey, I wonder if they knew the guy from the first movie. And they are commissioned to heist a single object, a mysterious VHS tape. The guys break into the house and find the tape, and the movie is them watching it and then cutting back to whatever strange mystery is happening with the criminals. It's very inventive, it's very immersive, it's very, very cool. Now, all the segments are really cool, but I want to shout out the shorts Tuesday the 17th for being a very high concept idea for a horror movie I can't say I've seen elsewhere, and I can't even say too much without giving it away, but it uses the VHS format really fun. And another shout out for Something Strange Happened to Emily when she was younger. Again, very inventive. It's told exclusively through video calls and the internet, and it features a hearty dose of medical body horror, wild twists, and just like the tiniest little bit of alien stuff. Just like a little bit. Number 3, Lake Mungo. Okay, let's let's go back to another lesser known one with Lake Mungo. This one's an Australian feature, came out around 2008. Lake Mungo is a healthy, hearty dose of scares and thrills and heart-wrenching family drama. Horror and family drama go hand in hand like the girl from Hereditary and a stop sign. Too soon? That was too far? That was too far? That was too far. In Lake Mungo, we're in the perspective of Matthew Palmer, a young man who has been depressed and broken shortly after his sister's drowning shattered his family's well-being and mental health. However, Matthew begins to see signs of his sister everywhere, feeling her presence in the house with him, and mostly because he keeps seeing her ghost all around. He sets up a surveillance camera system all over their house and begins making a documentary about his experience hunting for his sister and closure. As the investigation as to whether or not his sister really is haunting them, Matthew ends up uncovering family secrets that were long thought buried and finds himself haunted by his sister's loss in a way much grander than any ghost story could. Now, what I really like about this one is pretty much right up until credits, you'll be asking yourself what's happening. Not in a confusing way, like an Inception sort of thing. It's just got a bunch of fun and clever twists that kind of keep you guessing the entire film, keep you asking questions. The film uses the medium well. It allows the audience to go on this journey with the family, where you're there with them and you're asking too what's happening, if it's really a haunting or if it's all just a sad family wanting to see their daughter one last time. It honestly ends up being really heartwarming in a bizarre way. You don't see a lot of horror movies that kind of get you right here. And without spoiling like too much, because I do want you to see it, unlike Hereditary, this one doesn't really have like a happy ending, but it doesn't have a horrifically sad ending. It's kind of bittersweet. It's genuinely very touching. So if you're looking for something to tug at your heartstrings a lot while also making your hair stand on end, you can't go wrong with Lake Mungo. Number 2 is Wreck. Maybe you've already seen this one because it was a smash hit commercially and critically, but if you haven't, man, come on, you really oughta. Wreck is found footage stuff at its best, putting you smack dab in the POV of the action, and it makes you feel like you're both part of this horrifying nightmare, but also kind of like you're like an FBI agent watching evidence recovered years after the fact in a dark room. Wreck follows a film crew that's recording something when they find themselves caught in a way bigger story. When a neighbor attacks someone and bites them, police quarantine off a building for an unknown reason, and you get to experience it all go down in first person as more and more people inside the building seem to be turning into something a little rabid, vicious, and more than a little undead. Wreck does zombies 28 Days Later style, with a pretty interesting twist that I won't give away if you still haven't seen it. They're fast, violent, and unpredictable, and it makes for a super entertaining movie watching the protagonist try and fend off a horde of undead in these really cramped, tight, claustrophobic spaces. There's a lot of excellent choreography work going on here to make sure everything fits in the frame, and the first person view of the camera really makes it feel like you are stuck in there with them too. If you let yourself get into it, you really have a good time with this one. Like, if there was ever really a zombie apocalypse happening, I think we could all agree there'd be gigabytes worth of cell phone footage to go through. So in a bizarre way, this movie about a zombie apocalypse feels oddly realistic. Even just outside of being a good found footage horror movie, Wreck is also just a super good zombie movie if you're into that sort of thing. They remade it into Quarantine for Americans a year later, but if you want my advice, skip the remake and just go for the original, and that is honestly true of like 99.9% of all horror movies anyway. Okay, before we get into number 1 properly, I wanted to cheat a little bit and break the rules of top 5. Don't tell anybody that I added some extras, but I wanted to shout out a few honorable mentions that I love that didn't make the cut. Blair Witch is going to be the first one. The original, the sequels are all iffy. Number 2 is going to be Troll Hunters. Really fun monsters. Yeah. Paranormal Activity, it's pretty good. It's not super my thing, but it's pretty good. And finally, wanted to shout out Host really quick. It's about a seance that happens on Zoom, just came out, very modern. Okay, there we go. So number 1 on the list is going to be Creep. It's got nothing to do with Radiohead. Sorry. Coming to us from Patrick Bryce and indie darling Mark Duplass, he takes a break from earnestly mumbling through an indie movie to play a completely chilling, well, the title said it, Creep. This movie is basically just watching Mark Duplass be really weird in front of a camera for an hour and 20 minutes. It's a great example of when you can do a lot more with a lot less. This movie is as absolutely bare bones as it gets. There's 2 actors in the entire movie, and they're the 2 guys who wrote and directed the movie. A struggling videographer, Aaron, gets an offer to film a series of personal diaries for a strange client, Joseph, who has an inoperable brain tumor and wants to leave a series of videos behind for his unborn child. Which does sound nice, until Aaron gets there and discovers very quickly something is really off about this, and this isn't going to be a normal job. This movie is all performance, and Duplass crushes it as the bizarre, mysterious Joseph. He plays him really, realistically creepy. Like, he's the kind of guy you'd meet on a bus and spend the rest of the day thinking about. Like, you know something is wrong with the guy, but you're not really sure in what way and just how afraid of him and how dangerous he might be until it's too late. It's a movie that really gets in your head and gets right under your skin. If you leave the movie terrified of the main character, but also very enamored in equal measures, worry not, because Bryce and Duplass agree with you, since there's a Creep 2, which is apparently just as good as the first. I haven't seen it yet, I only have so much time, but I should see it eventually, since there is a Creep 3 in early pre-production stages. So although this guy may be a completely unsettling weirdo, we love this creep and can't get enough. He belongs here. And that's all for this video, my ghouls and goblins. Thanks so much for listening to me ramble about horror movies. That's my favorite activity on the planet for you. Creep on creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one.